Good morning, everyone, and welcome to People's Church. Whether this is your first time at People's Church or you come every Sunday or anywhere in between, I welcome you. My name is Laura McClellan, and I'm from the Sunday Services Committee. People's Church is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association and part of a tradition of liberal religion. Here, our mission is to be a beloved community, embracing and serving our diverse world. This morning, we are joined by Reverend Shelly Thompson, who is a UU minister with a passion for working with congregations to build an accountable, faith-sustaining, beloved community. Her work in parish ministry has focused on faith formation, multi-generational ministry, and covenantal process work as integral components of transformational change. Welcome all, and now to our introit. So, if you're lighting a chalice at home this morning, you're encouraged to type into the chat box, "A chalice is lit," and then your location. This morning's chalice lighting is "The Hearth of the Chalice" by Bear W. Kolescua. As we light the chalice, may our souls become its hearth. We join our hearts to the one great flame of bright compassion, beloved community, and fervent justice. May we become lanterns to the world, lighting the way for all.
Good morning, everyone. I am honored to share worship with you today in this virtual space made sacred by our loving presence together. I share with you the words of my beloved colleague, the Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to work for justice. It's the church that assures us we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength is too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. In that spirit of gratitude and hope, let us worship together. I invite you to join me for a story about opening our hearts to each other and loving each other for who we are on the inside. So let's take just a moment to notice that we are all here in a virtual space together. And we're going to offer each other some love, and I will do it first to show you, and then we'll all do it together. I love the me of me, and I love the you of all of you. So now together, I love the me of me, and I love the you of all of you. Thank you. Oh, all warm and fuzzy. Thank you very much. Our story this morning is by author Bell Hooks, and it is called Skin Again. The skin I'm in is just a covering. It cannot tell my story. The skin I'm in is just a covering. If you want to know who I am, you have got to come inside and open your heart way wide. The skin I'm in looks good to me. It will let you know one small way to trace my identity. But then again, the skin I'm in will always be just a covering. It cannot tell my story. If you want to know who I am, you have got to come inside. Be with me inside the me of me, all made up of stories, past, present, and future, some true to life, and others all fun and fantasy, all the way I imagine me. You can find out all about me coming close and letting go of who you might think I am before you come inside and let me be real, and you become real to me. All real then, in that place where skin again is just one small way to see me, but not real enough to be all, the me of me or the you of you. For we are all inside, made up of real history, real dreams, and the stuff of all we hope for when we can be all real together on the inside.
I am a third generation member of People's Church. My grandparents came to People's Church after World War II when my grandmother was 23. She brought my mother in a basket when my mother was an infant, and my mother brought me just weeks after I was born. Contributing to People's Church has been a family tradition. My grandmother worked in the archives, was on the board, taught Sunday school, and if there was a job to do, she probably tried it. My mother was on the board and taught Sunday school for many years. And now I am on the Sunday Services Committee and looking forward to doing more. The church has been a great support to my family, and many in the congregation have been friends. All that is possible because of you. I want to thank you all for sharing your time, talent, and treasure with the church. The offering will now be received.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, this world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Please join in giving thanks for all that sustains us. From the countless gifts we each have been given, gifts of life and love and sustenance, we bring these small portions to share in the works of love, which none of us can accomplish alone.
I invite you into a time of meditation, reflection, or prayer as we focus our hearts and minds on the precious gifts that emerge from living in beloved community. I will share with you some inspirational words from Reverend Teresa Inez Soto, followed by a brief silence, and then the beautiful poem, One Love, by Reverend Dr. Hope Johnson, whose love lives on with us, even though we have lost her. We hold on. There's a moment before dawn when the night is firmly in charge of the sky. There is no arguing with the opacity that holds both a fertile imagination and cover of destruction. Just hold on. There is a moment when the dream we share is newly born, wet and wriggling in our hands. Sometimes it's true that salvific futures look vulnerable and small before us. We remain unsure. Just hold on. Anything good was small at first. You know that Dr. King said, "I have a dream." It definitely was not the "I have a reality" speech. It was real in a different way that could be felt, that could be shared. They held on. The dreaming speech happened in August 1963, and you know what came before was April, a letter from a Birmingham jail. One moment did inform the other, but the future being built could not be known with certitude. They held on. We gather, Unitarian Universalists, certain only of our power to be human, finding ourselves committed to keeping our word and being our covenant. And when we fail to keep our promises, we don't throw them away, labeled impossible. We take up our courage. We begin again. We hold on. Sprinkled in the wind, we can hear the question: if we are not white supremacy shaped into religious robes and rituals, then who are we? We are present, both in attention and in the answer. We are here. We hold on. We contain multitudes, not just of questions and contradictions, but also of possibilities. We continue to labor for the creation of community in which all of us, not just each, but every part of us is welcome in our home of faith. We hold on. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We're active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. We are one, working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing, and rejoicing, getting to know each other, taking risks, opening up, questioning, seeking, searching, trying to understand, struggling, making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening. living our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community. Together, we are one.
As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free, free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thought and lifeless greed, free from a social code that fails to serve the cause of human need, a freedom that reveres the past but trusts the dawning future more, and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic church, the future waits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free.
What does it mean to be a people of beloved community? Throughout Unitarian Universalism all around the country, congregations are wrestling with this challenging question. As a people of faith, we are calling ourselves to look within and imagine an expanded vision of what it means to be Unitarian Universalists in the 21st century. We're calling ourselves to widen our circle of concern, to fully embrace the entire human family. We are calling ourselves to build beloved community. Our hearts urge us on, saying yes, yes to that call. And my dear ones, this takes courage, for we know the way will be hard and the journey lifelong. The truth is, this work is reality bending, paradigm smashing, and it's a countercultural revolution. It's going to take a while. We can only be brave enough to remain steadfast to our commitments by affirming again and again our promises to seek the truth in love and to help one another. The lasting change we want to create can only happen when we work together, all of us, together. Saying yes means doing some soul searching, truth-telling, and deep reflection. Our faith encourages us to inhabit Rumi's advice: live the questions now. Have faith that we will live our way into the answers someday. So today I offer us for consideration some spiritual practices to help us live these hard questions. The first is the task of learning to practice our covenants as a shared process theology. A shared process theology. The second is bravely and honestly examining our UU identity and the role of white supremacy culture within ourselves and our congregational cultures. The third is to gratefully, humbly accept the beautiful gift inside of these challenges. Now is our golden opportunity to transform ourselves into beloved communities that more closely align the liberating intentions of our principles with our impact for justice in the wider community and the world. We have liberating principles to create justice, equity, and compassion in human relationships. That's our second principle. We recognize the truth spoken by Emma Lazarus we're not free until we are all free. We aspire to build worldwide beloved community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. That's our sixth principle. We need to better align our intentions and our impact. So as always, we start with our covenant. What does it mean to practice covenanting as a process theology? At its core, Unitarian Universalism has the sacred seeds of our living religious tradition. We're non-creedal, we're covenantal, and we're a freely chosen faith community. We're united not by a single set of shared beliefs, but by the quality and the integrity of the covenantal relationships we create together. We share a process theology that guides the way we live our lives and how we build relationships with one another based on our shared faith in the worth and dignity of all humanity as members of the interdependent web. Those are our cornerstone principles, 1 and 7. Liberating principles. Our shared Unitarian Universalist process theology is a living covenant that emerges through what process theologian Henry Nelson Wyman calls creative interchange. It's a process of embracing our differences and getting to know one another in ways that celebrate, grow, and enrich us all. We call one another into the process of covenanting every time we gather. We're doing it right now. I want you to notice the covenanting is a verb in this sense. It's something we do together every time we gather. It operates through a series of mutually agreed upon spiritual practices, how we call each other into community and how we call each other back into community when we get off track, because we know we do. Our covenants are creative interchange. So what does it mean to be a Unitarian Universalist beloved community? I give you a definition of beloved community from our siblings at the Black Lives of UU Organizing Collective, also known as BLUE. Quote, beloved community happens when people of diverse racial, ethnic, educational, class, gender, sexual orientation, backgrounds, and identities come together in an interdependent relationship of love and mutual respect and care that seek to realize justice within the community and in the broader world, end quote. When we look at most of our Unitarian Universalist communities, we see the principles on the wall, and we also see that our communities are predominantly European American or white. Not entirely, we are diverse in many ways, but our churches don't reflect nearly as much diversity as we imagine they could, given our values and our principles. Our covenanting process then doesn't just reflect our values and principles. There's something else going on. Our process of being in relationship with one another is also reflecting our dominant culture. We are telling the truth about this. We name it. It's called white supremacy culture. It's important to note that there don't need to be any actual white supremacist present for white supremacy culture to be perpetuated. It's systemic, structural, and institutional. And because it's in the dominant culture, it's in all of us, no matter how we identify as individuals, and it's in every single one of our congregations. It certainly has very different impacts and costs depending on a person's identity and social location, but it is present everywhere and it harms everyone. Our Unitarian Universalist white supremacy culture is a problem that is limiting us and damaging the potential positive impact of our mission by perpetuating the negative impacts of structural institutional racism and other oppressions. It's heartbreaking, this gap between our intentions and our impact. Quite often, they don't match as well as we think they should. We know we can do better. We work hard at this. It's really important to us. But our history as Unitarians, Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists, it's punctuated by many stories of exclusion, discrimination, and tragically missed opportunities. over the decades, while there have been repeated attempts to name the problem and resolve to change, little institutional change has actually occurred. And all of those broken promises are still breaking our hearts today. At the same time, our members and our congregations have continued to participate in social justice actions and partnerships across the entire gamut of issues. Many UUs come to our faith because of our social justice work that we're often known for in the communities we serve. So we know we're doing great work, but we do still see this gap between our intentions and all that hard work and devotion and the impact we have on justice in our communities and in our own congregations. So we're doing so much, and yet these cultural limits have been frustrating some of our efforts and working against us. The staff of the New England region of the Unitarian Universalist Association has recently been looking at this problem and encourages us to think about the difference between a limiting covenant and a liberating covenant. A resource they use is one of my favorites. It's from Tema Okun and Kenneth Jones called White Supremacy Culture. The authors describe many of the damaging characteristics and habits of white supremacy culture as it appears in organizations like ours, such as either or, right, wrong, win, lose thinking, perfectionism and judgment, criticism, and the expectation of comfort. The goal is to make all of these habits noticeable to all of us. A process observation technique. Let's point these things out and make sure we're noticing when we're doing them. And then the authors detail the behaviors and practices that they call the antidotes. There are antidotes to those limiting practices. Either or is replaced by the spiritual practice of yes and thinking. Yes, and there's more than one reality. There's more than one way. Yes, and both things can be true at once. It's a spiritual practice to think this way. Perfectionism is replaced by acceptance and encouragement to learn from our mistakes. That's our third principle. The expectation of comfort is replaced by the understanding that discomfort is actually necessary for lasting change. Inviting everyone into beloved community means making room for each person to show up as their whole self and not have to leave parts of themselves at the door. There are spiritual practices that tear down walls. This is good news. Building beloved community is the antidote to white supremacy culture. We can get rid of the white supremacy culture, build a beloved community, and live into our principles. We have the power of choice here. Our covenants can either limit us by perpetuating white supremacy culture, or our way of covenanting and relating with one another can liberate us all by building beloved community that really does invite everyone into their wholeness and value them for their inherent worth and dignity. This process of collective liberation empowers us to align those principles and their impact in the world. We can't even begin to imagine what that would look like. And I would like us to try, though. So many possibilities. And it's never going to be perfect. We're always going to make mistakes. It's going to take a lot of courage and a lot of trial and error and a lot of trying again, forgiving and beginning again in love. But yes, there is a way forward together. Crucial insight and motivation to focus our efforts on this came in 2013 with the proposed Unitarian Universalist 8th principle, and it was created by Paula Cole-Jones and co-author Bruce Pollock Johnson. Paula's an expert. Paula is an African-American Unitarian Universalist. She's the founder of ADORE, a dialogue on race and ethnicity, and a former president of DRUM, the Diverse and Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries. And she's an independent consultant specializing in multicultural competencies and institutional change. The 8th Principle website tells us the story. Quote, Paula developed the idea of the existence of two different paradigms in UU circles, the 7 principles and beloved community, deep multiculturalism. And after working with congregations for over 15 years, she realized that a person can believe they're being a good UU and following the 7 principles without thinking about or dealing with racism and other oppressions at the systemic level. She realized that an 8th principle was needed to correct this. The website concludes the story. The 8th principle came from a feeling that we need something to renew our commitment to this work, to hold ourselves accountable, and to fulfill the potential of our existing principles. End quote. The 8th principle says this: we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build diverse, multicultural, beloved community, by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. It is a mouthful, but all of that language is very specifically chosen to reflect past failed or incomplete attempts to follow through on promises and resolutions to change. Accountability is the key. This 8th principle work is all the more important because in recent years, we are living through an escalating national identity crisis, which at its center is, at least in some good measure, a divide between people who are working to dismantle white supremacy culture and people who are trying desperately to uphold it. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called to rise and carry out the moral and ethical mandates of our highest aspirations. And this is demanding work. It is messy, it's painful, it's uncomfortable. We make mistakes, and the work is never done. It's a lifelong process. So it's a really good thing we have a shared process theology to give us hope and help us along the way. The intentions are all there. The hard work, we're ready to do that, absolutely. We want to create relationships of collective liberation. Yes, we do. But let's face it, doing things differently than we've always done them is never easy. Sometimes our resolve dissolves and we don't want to make the effort. But yet I know with 100% certainty that we can do this. Exhibit A is the global COVID pandemic. Nearly a year ago, just like that, we changed the way we do church. We went digital, we learned to Zoom, we coffee chat in breakout rooms, we know how to spotlight and share screens. And we're socially distancing and we're certainly wearing our masks. We're still doing almost everything we were before, yes, and we're helping each other through this strangest of crises. Ample evidence that we're capable of making really big changes to the process of being together in order to be accountable for keeping each other safe while still promoting and sustaining our sense of connection and belonging. It's clear where COVID is concerned, each and every one of us is susceptible to this virus, and every one of us has to participate in taking care of each other and protecting one another from harm, especially because some of us are more vulnerable than others. This is a prime example of a covenant for collective liberation in action. We're not free until we're all free. It makes sense with a virus, doesn't it? We are working on being the antidote to the spread of COVID by getting vaccinated. So I am doubly certain that we can transform our Unitarian Universalist process of covenantal relating to one another that we do all the time whenever we gather into yet another accountable collective liberation process that frees us all from white supremacy culture. We are called to build beloved community together Together we are saying yes. Say it with me. Yes, yes, yes. My dear ones, please join me in singing, answering the call of love.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. I leave you with the inspirational words of Samuel Trumbore. Go forth in simplicity, find the path that leads to compassion and wisdom, that leads to happiness, peace, and ease. Welcome the stranger and open your heart to a world in need of healing. Be courageous before the forces of hate. Hold and embody a vision of the common good that serves the needs of all people. Blessed be. I love you. Amen.